Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. We get started as we do each and every single week by introducing my two co-hosts, Ruben Bressler.
Hello.
Aaron Campbell. Yeah, and so as we do, we also start out with the first pick. This is the number one thing that people are talking about, and the number one thing people are talking about this week is the Battle for Zendikar pre-release, which I attended. And did you guys attend pre-releases?
I attended one of the pre-releases, yes.
So did I. I attended the midnight one, and it was fun. And so I have some all-stars from my deck, which I was surprised and in some ways not surprised. I want to start, before we start talking about the cards, the packaging
was super cool.
Was amazing. It was great. It was right here. It was absolutely phenomenal. How cool this thing was. It was an actual deck box. Wizards. Look at this thing. This thing is super sweet.
Nice job, yeah.
I'm so impressed. You know, like, I mean, sure, I couldn't fit, like, you know, an extra pack of sleeves and whatever and all in here, but no, I could pick a bunch of stuff in here, my entire sideboard. It was really cool. They even have a divider.
The dice.
The dice in the bottom.
It fits in the bottom.
Yeah, the dice is kind of stuck here in this little kind of hole they dug for it with the way the packaging is. It was brilliant. I loved it. And, you know, way to go, Wizards. You did a great thing. I love it. I don't care. Like, there was a question... And I guess we can kind of talk about this at first. There was a question that Aaron Forsyth asked, which was, how do you feel about just getting, you know, 6 packs in the promo that is a rare of some kind? And, you know, I think as an enfranchised, super invested player that I watch all the time, or I mean, that I play all the time ever, and I talk about every card in the set with Brad and stuff, like, to me, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. But for the new player, they were pretty kind of overwhelmed, is a way to put it.
Agreed.
I saw some guy
a set like this.
Yeah, I saw some guy, like, he was just looking at it and he was like thinking and he was looking at it and he was like, this is my first pre-release.
I was pretty overwhelmed.
Yeah, this is my first pre-release, and I think I'm just going to give the cards to you. He was talking to one of his buddies who was sitting nearby. He was like, I don't know how to do this, you know, and like he just, you know, just kind of went off and left, and that's fine. But it was one of those things where it's like, as a new player, it's kind of an overwhelming experience, particularly when you have these incredibly deep designs and these different kind of themes and stuff, and they may not be 100% on top of what those things are.
Yeah. Well, the problem, I think, is that I think pre-releases suffer from the same problem that FNM has, in that the social contract is very different. And there's a disconnect between how Wizards sees these events and how we see these events. And you're right, the majority of the people who were complaining about the seated boxes were the experienced people like you and I. It wasn't the new people that had a problem with it. And, you know, because that outcry was so loud, of course they changed it, but that wasn't who they were for in the first place. And that's something I talk about a lot, is it not being for you. And I do worry that the newer players were affected by this because they weren't the ones complaining, because they were fine with it. And, you know, I do look at pre-releases as being primarily for newer players, or just being a more casual event. I don't go to pre-releases to win a case or to spike them or do anything really crazy. And there's definitely a disconnect there, and I'm not really sure how to fix it, but it's very, you know, it's very obvious, you know, that there is one.
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited. I got my Oblivion Sower, you know, foil promo, and our friend Nick Miller, he opened the foil Prism Array.
Nice.
He got the booby prize. He got the goat, if you will, instead of the car. And he was like, Do I even take it out of the package? And we're like, you're like, no, just leave it.
Leave it in the sleeve.
It's awful. Yeah. Let it be awful. Let it stay awful. That card is a joke, and Wizards should feel bad because they did a very horrible thing. So, you know, Ruben, how did yours
Mine was fun. I went to my local Saturday pre-release here at Cheese Boy Comics, about 10 minutes from my house. Cheese Boy Comics. It's a local store in South Vegas. They do a great job. They're on Rainbow. If you guys are ever in Vegas, they're off the strip a little ways, but they do a great job. Is it spelled really
weird, like CHEEZ or something?
Cheese Boy Comics, and they got a slice of Swiss cheese as their logo, and that's just what they are, man.
Oh, see, the Wisconsin girl in me loves that. Like,
yeah, and they're awesome. They hung little Eldrazi's or little hedrons from the ceiling that had like things, like little sheets of paper in them. That every round there would be a random drawing and say, "Hey, you won." Pulled down a hedron, and you won whatever it says in the hedron.
Cool.
Dude, that's so cool.
Play mats or little promos and stuff. My draft deck or my sealed deck was super complicated. This is a weird format. My rare was Canopy Vista, which is kind of cool.
That's great. I think that's cool. Full dual land.
I'm rich.
Full dual,
I mean, obviously my deck was horrible,
land.
but hey,
sure.
I got this foil thing, and then I opened up 2 more lands. So I'm like, okay, well, my mana is wonky, but I get to cast all my spells, and then I just put all of the colorless things, all of the Devoid guys in the same deck together.
Right.
And Devoid and Ingest are good mechanics. Don't get me wrong, but I was even a little overwhelmed by how many words all of my cards had. Mm-hmm. Like Benthic Infiltrator is the 1/4 for 3 that can't be blocked, that ingests and is devoid.
Right.
And I had 2 of that guy, and I was like, oh, this guy's great. He blocks early, and he's like a clock later. And turns out that guy is just stone cold unbeatable. He's like, you just get a ton of ground stalls in this format. There's like no flyers. Or not enough flyers, and that guy just pounds in for 1 every turn, and 1 of their library every turn too, and it turns on all your other engine cards, and so that guy was pretty cool. But when your Storm Crows have 85 words on them, it's a pretty intimidating format, especially for a new player. I am certainly sure that I built my deck wrong, just because I didn't know what all my cards like really did. Like, I don't have time to read a novel in 30 minutes to build my deck. But the interactions between all the cards were super cool. The fact that your awakened lands are colorless
sometimes matters.
Sometimes matters, and is a cool little wrinkle in the format. Using the Exile Zone as a resource was a thing that happened a lot. The fact that you can pull things from exile to bounce creatures or make them discard a card or whatever was super relevant. I had a good time at this at the pre-release, and even though all the cards were super complicated, as the tournament went on, I was like, okay, I think I'm beginning to understand what this format's all about. And it was certainly way different than any other sealed format I've played before because of the Exile Zone mechanics.
Sure. Aaron, how'd you feel? How was your experience?
Oh, girl. Okay, so whenever I play pre-releases, I have this really bad habit of making these very complicated decks where, whenever you see the villains in the movie that have like the really big blueprint with like the lines and the X's and the O's, that's how I always fantasize that my deck is going to go, and then of course it never goes that way. Nice. So the 6 rares are some of the rares that I opened. I opened the Sire of Stagnation, which I was excited about. I opened the blue-white Merfolk Legend that makes awaken things.
Yep.
Seems good.
I had a Ruinous
Dar.
Yeah, I had a Ruinous Path, and then I had Planar Outburst.
Nice.
So my first thought was to go Esper.
Okay.
I was like, okay, Esper, but I really don't want to be mana screwed at a pre-release, so I tend to play it safe and just stick with 2 colors. I didn't have enough black-blue to really devote to that deck. Like, I had like 75% of the cards to do it, but not enough. But I did have quite a few black and white. I had the Clastria Healer, I had some of the vampires, I had some of the allies, so I was like, all right, we'll do black-white. I've got the core that you can tap to gain a life, so we'll set off this neat little engine of life gain and triggers. And then I had the Allied Heater Network, so I made sure that everything I had was below 5, so that way I could just get into my little guys. And it didn't really go that way. Everybody I faced was playing Control. It wasn't like other pre-releases where you have a lot of little creatures and then you're using combat tricks to sort of break the stall. It was really crummy Eldrazi that fly, but we're going to bounce, we're going to kill, we're going to counter, we're going to do all these things. And so I wasn't able to set up that engine that I had fantasized about in the blueprint. It just didn't really go that way.
I will say that this format has a lot fewer flyers than I imagined it, and there were just a ton of board stalls. in every one of my matches.
At one
I
point,
will say though that ingest was also really pesky, especially in sealed, where a lot of times you're playing a lot of one-ofs. There were a couple times where that ingest guy Ruben you talked about, he would hit through and it's like, well, there goes the Calastria healer, which the whole engine's built around, or there goes the Ruinous Path, and it looks really harmless on paper, but when it's really going off and you're watching that one card, your one bomb get eaten with that, it feels pretty crummy.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's no more than kind of the milling, right? When you mill,
I mean,
and you're like, oh, if it wasn't right there, that'd have been awful. I had, I had obviously when I opened Ulamog and an Oblivion Sower, I was already doing okay. And then, along came Drana, because she's a real fair Magic card.
Yeah, Drana's not a remotely beatable card.
So
in sealed
game. Yeah. So yeah, round 1, game 1, turn 3 Drana, turn 5 scoop. He saw it hit once, and then he saw that he didn't draw a removal spell for his turn. Then he just scooped. And then the next time I played it, and he played the -6 -0 blue enchantment that makes him lose flying. Tightening coils, yes. And there it sat until I got to 7 mana. I scoured from existence his tightening coils, and he scooped. Because this card is completely crazy bananas, and there's a reason that all of a sudden it's doing this crazy price spike and things. So Calastria Healer was amazing. This card did everything I needed it to do. Not only did it drain when it comes into the battlefield, not only was Drana an ally because she needs to be. Yeah. It had a terrific interaction with this card, which I think is maybe backwards on the screen or whatever. But that is Blood Bond Vampire.
Oh, I have one of those.
The 4 mana 3/3 that whenever you gain life, you get +1/+1 counter. So with Calastria Healer out, as it is a Vampire Shaman ally, just as you play it, it becomes a 4/4, and that was really freaking awesome. Also really awesome, Complete Disregard, which is foil. I don't know if you can see it's foil, but it's foil, and it's nice, and this card is very, very good. As we mentioned at one point, the Sky Spawner, the Eldrazi Sky Spawner, this card is bananas.
Yeah, like, that's the pregnant Eldrazi.
Yeah, like it's just the best Windrake of all time, and it is not freaking close. I never got to actually cast Ulamog. Right before I cast him, they would always die. But
you got Ulamog in your deck too? Jeez.
He's only right. He's right there. He's a big bro. He's hanging out. He's having fun. And
I had the twins. I had the Yin Yang twins in my deck. I had Desolation twins. That was the way I killed people.
The one
I faced an opponent that had that, and then the blue creature that makes them uncounterable.
Oh wow.
Oof. Yeah. So take 20 uncounterable. That's fine.
This guy. Right here, the Ruin Processor, this was an MVP for me. He pulled me back into a game in which I was dead because that guy, my opponent, had a 3/3 Vigilance Flyer, the white one, and it just beat the crap out of me. That thing did like 15 damage, man. Like
that thing looks really unassuming, but as I mentioned, there's like no flyers in this format.
It's so hard to kill.
There's the 2/1 for 3 in blue, and then there's like the 3/2 for 4 in blue, and then there's a couple white guys.
Yeah.
Like there's a Windrake in white, I think, and like that's it. That's about it. There are not a lot of ways to win through the air, so that 3/3 is just enormous.
Yeah. And Oblivion Sower as a 5/8 is just ridiculous. It's just unstoppable. Like it just becomes an abyss, and he has to start jump blocking it, or he's going to lose a quarter of his life total. You know, just every single time. And I mean, getting lands with it accelerated me. Like that thing could easily see standard play as powerful as it was.
I did see an interesting play at the pre-release. Somebody had used Crumble to Dust, and then because people tend to think of Crumble to Dust as more of like a sideboard card or more of something cute. And so he did the Crumble to Dust, and then he used that land to feed the Oblivion Sower.
Nice.
Which I was like, all right, desperate times, I get it. But yeah, it was just a neat little interaction I just didn't think of at the time.
Not bad.
So, it's neat. It's cool.
I like the little sub archetypes that they've sort of inserted. My problem with sealed is that it feels a lot like this sealed format in some ways feels a lot like Lorwyn sealed did and Shadowmoor sealed did, in which all of the mechanics are much more linear and work when you have a bunch of them all working together. It makes a lot more sense. But in a sealed pool, you're going to open like 5 allies and not really have enough for an allies deck. You're going to have like 7 devoid things that let you have sort of a devoid theme happening. And you've got like 6 landfall things and a couple ways to get extra landfall triggers, and nothing really works together. But when you draft it, you can be like, all right, I want to get as many Valakut Predators as I can into one deck together. Right?
Yeah, this seems like a really awesome draft format.
Yeah, the draft format makes a lot more sense to me. It was kind of a everybody's deck looked kind of schizophrenic, except for the one guy that opened like 3 ally rares, right? There was one guy at our pre-release who just opened the March from the Tomb and the land and the double strike guy, and that was like 3 of his 6 rares, and it's just like, all right, kid, you got it.
Wow. Get wrecked, sir.
Yeah, exactly. But most everybody's deck had like some allies in it and also some devoid things, and we're just trying to value and nickel and dime you like normal sealed. It's just that the cards just were that much further apart in terms of working together.
Yeah, they kind of bridged the gap a little bit with the Scions. I felt that there was enough, like, you know, randomly make a Scion, you know, the Windrake, randomly make a Scion, do this thing, make a Scion, like, that's cool. Right. And slowly but surely, those were what got me to, like, every time I cast Oblivion Sower, it was I had 5 mana and a Scion. You know, like it got me that extra little bit, and then of course Oblivion gets me more lands, and then all of a sudden my stuff's going. So there were a lot of really interesting ways I think that they kind of bridged that gap, but it just seems like a poor seal, but an amazing draft environment.
I agree.
Because you can really do something with your deck every single time. You can say, all right, I'm going to go in this direction, and I'm going to draft this thing, and I'm going to look for allies, I'm going to look for Eldrazi, I'm going to look for Devoid.
The sealed looks pretty cool. Like the black, you can also just draft the black-white life gain thing deck that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of like little tiny sub-archetypes that you can go into with this set that look really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought that the pre-release was fun. I think it was not very good for the new player. I am glad... It was
definitely super complex.
Yeah, and what we're going to have are these complex sets that are complex because we like them complex, and they're getting rid of the core set because it was too complex, because they're like, because it was too simple rather, and it wasn't complex enough. And they were trying to bridge this gap of just like, well, we want it to be, we want it to be for the new players, but we need it for the enfranchised players. It's like, no, everybody wants to be enfranchised. Right. No one likes to be kind of talked down to like, well, these are the simple cards. These are just these are the vanilla ones because we know that you can't handle the big ones with all the words on them.
I'm just a simple caveman lawyer, man. Just give me 2/2s for 2.
Yep.
I just want the colorless and a white with whatever the keyword is from the set, and colorless and red deal 2 damage with whatever the keyword is for the set. That's all I want.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be, I feel ultimately like if they bring back the seeded packs, I think it's fine. I mean, it didn't like dramatically decrease my play experience. It just said, oh cool, here's all your bomb uncommons, like, and your good rare that we made sure was decent or whatever, and it's right here, and you got that guaranteed. But I don't think I would ever be able to get like an Oblivion Sower if I have to pick a color, and they're not going to seed a colorless card into the colored pack or whatever, and that's where your pre-release rare comes from. And I was like, man, I'm glad it's this way, and I like complex things, but I definitely saw some people who didn't.
Yeah.
And it made me a little sad.
Positives and negatives, strikes and gutters, ups and downs. I think that it's good to change it. I think that they could go back to the seeded packs. I wouldn't be unhappy if they did. I personally like the unseeded packs, like this sealed format, slightly better. Particularly when you've got so many highly sought after lands in a base set like this.
Yeah.
I think that it makes more sense to have unseeded packs where randomly you could get a stamped Lumbering Falls or something.
And somebody did. I saw one who got that.
So
it was really sweet.
You could get some cool dollars in your back pocket when that happens.
Absolutely. So that was really sweet. We're going to move ourselves on to Desperate Ravings because there also, as with every set release, there happens to be a banned and restricted update. Now, for quite a while, there wasn't a lot of movement. There was, okay, you're getting rid of Treasure Cruise and Legacy because it was bananas, understood, which immediately made everyone go to Dig Through Time. And then all of a sudden it was, man, Dig Through Time needs to be banned because, oh my god, it's ridiculous. And so now we have Dig Through Time that's banned in Legacy, it's restricted in Vintage. But they also did a bunch of other stuff that not a lot of people saw coming. They unbanned Black Vise and Legacy. They restricted Chalice of the Void in Vintage. They unrestricted Thirst for Knowledge in Vintage, which was like, I just wasn't expecting all these changes, which I think is really cool. I don't know if Black Vise is even playable in Legacy.
Probably not.
From what I've been seeing, I have a GPT this Saturday, so I've been perusing Legacy boards to see what people predict, the format's going to look like after the bannings. And the most popular theory around Black Vise actually is that it might have home in a burn deck.
Yes,
sure.
Which I think is fascinating because burn is like non-existent in Legacy, which I love.
Not quite non-existent, just not good.
1% of the meta where it belongs.
I mean, it's one of those decks. It's like Dredge in Legacy. It's like Belcher in Legacy.
It's like Dredge.
Where it wins an open like once every 18 months. And then when it doesn't win an open, it's horrible. But then it just wins an open once every 18 months. And everyone's like, oh, well, I don't know where that came from. And then it just goes back into its 1% of the meta backwaters. I like Black Vise being unbanned in Legacy. I've been a big proponent of that. And Earthcraft. I think it's time for Earthcraft to come back. Hey, man, I'll get on Earthcraft. Give me a second. I'll talk about Black Vise first. Black Vise is from it was banned in an era when it was amazing and broken, and obviously now it's not. I like unbanning it because it's a card that is good in burn decks but bad in Delver decks, which I really like. I think that that's a good addition. Certainly Burn is going to be the, you're not going to have any Owling Mine type decks in Legacy. You don't want to give your opponent cards in Legacy.
Right.
And the existence of Force of Will really mitigates the ability to overload your opponent's hand. But I think that it's about darn time that Black Vice came back. I'm pretty happy that it's back. I like that alpha and beta copies of Black Vice are like $150 now, which is just delightful. I love
awesome.
It. And I really hope to see that card. I mean, it's a whole sub game when you play with Black Vice. You're like, geez, how do I empty my hand so quickly?
Right.
My opponent plays turn 1 Black Vice, and now I'm just locked. What do I do? I have these Jaces in my deck that draw me more cards, but now these deal me damage. How do I even win?
Sure.
So I think that's a super interesting dichotomy, and I'm glad that Black Vice is back. And I'd be interested in testing out a Burn deck that has Black Vice in it. Obviously, I'm the Mountains guy, but I think that's I'd give it the time of day.
Yeah. Aaron, like Dredge, it is its own little thing that no one. Well, I don't know about if no one likes to see Burn on camera, but Dredge on camera is kind of miserable.
And I'll agree with you on that, especially because of how much we have to mulligan. Like, there are times it's not entertaining to watch somebody mulligan to 3 and be like, well, next game. So sure. I agree with you. It's definitely not entertaining to watch. And I know people have asked me if I've thought about streaming, and I was like, I don't feel that's entertaining to watch. So I agree with you on that.
Well, I mean,
sorry, I was just going to mention that there are certain decks that are good that aren't exciting to watch on camera, but there's also like Counterbalance Top that's on camera a lot. You don't get to just choose what's entertaining. Like Zoo is super awesome on camera.
Sure.
There's an equal number of spells and lands, and super interesting things are happening on the board at all times.
Right.
But it's not good. So whatever's good is just what's going to get played. And Burn is actually kind of not miserable, but it might actually get better now that you have another permanent in play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you certainly underestimate the desire for people to watch you play Magic the Gathering. Because that was one of the big things I underestimated many, many years ago. And one of the reasons that the Magic Show ended up the way it did was because originally I was like, well, I'll just record myself doing a thing on video, and I'll play Magic Online. And, the content coordinator was like, you're insane. No one's ever going to sit there and watch you play Magic Online. And yet now Twitch.tv is like, this thing. So if you made those videos, people would watch them and tell you how much they liked them. I know this from experience because you would be one of the only people making those videos. It's like it's not a deck that not all people enjoy, and when a subset does, and you're the person that's providing the content that they're looking for, they're really going to appreciate it.
Well, I think it comes down to, like I said, when the deck is doing its thing. When you have that Lion's Eye Diamond, Faithless Looting, that God hand. When you're able to sacrifice 3 Icarids and get 12 zombies and make a 16/16 Golgari troll, that can be really fun to watch. But sometimes you do see that turn 2 Rest in Peace where you're like, huh, and then that that's not fun. That's not fun to watch.
Sure.
And it's just one of those decks where when it's going great, yeah, I could see that being amusing. But then if I see a really early hate card and you're having to watch me sort of flounder through that hate, that's not so much fun to watch.
Sure. I mean, and one of the things that Randy Bueller noted about Vintage regarding Dig Through Time, which I thought was neat, is that it's able to really open up the metagame, because now Vintage was very much Delver centric, because we needed to. Because people were just trying to run through cantrips, and they're trying to get as much stuff in the graveyard, and then dig through time and dig on your dig and all this other crap. And so now that's not happening per se anymore, and then the metagame can open up a little bit. Chalice not completely hosing Moxes on turn 1 every single time.
Makes
that's a
shops
good thing.
A little bit less popular in Vintage. I mean, the Vintage metagame is, it's in a weird spot in terms of what Wizards cares about. The fact that they're paying any attention at all to it is good, I guess.
But, they should feel blessed that Wizards cares enough to be like, all right, fine, we'll restrict this stupid thing because it's stupid. Like, it's whatever.
Vintage has sort of gotten into this. There's 3 pillars to the format there instead of what used to be 4. Mm-hmm. There used to be Storm decks, and there just aren't Storm decks anymore.
Right.
There are blue control decks, there's Shops, and there's Dredge. Mm-hmm. And Shops is just amazing, especially with the addition of Hangerback Walker in older formats. And, removing one of their tools does not completely destroy the deck, but I think that it will even out the meta slightly, meaning that there will be more of a third. breakdown as opposed to the current breakdown, which is there's a lot of shop stacks in Vintage these days. So I definitely like restricting dig through time. They just whenever you print a cost reduction mechanic and you put card selection and card draw on it, you just know it's going to get banned.
Right. So that perfectly segues me to, I think Dig Through Time is a fine standard card. In fact, I really like it. I appreciate it. I like that if Blue's best spell is Dig Through Time, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay. I'm totally okay with Treasure Cruise in standard. Neither of these cards have been like, oh my god, crazy powerful. The metagame is revolving around it. They're just really good. There's no doubt about they're good. I appreciate they're good. So what I hope that Wizards R&D takes away from this is you can go ahead and print cards that are bananas in older sets. And they've done this before, hashtag mental misstep. Like, you know, where they're like, we know this card is bananas in these formats, but who cares? We'll see if it actually is that good. And then it's that good. And then they're like, okay, sorry, we should have, you know, just hey, Wizards, just ban it from the get-go. Don't make us live through a world.
Chances.
Yeah, just don't, you know, and make standard cool and give standard all these weird cards that would be completely insane in older formats, because you can stop them from being played in older formats. And instead you can say standard is better when this spell exists in it, and I'm totally okay with that. So I'm hoping to see more Dig Through Time-esque cards in the future, if only because I think they're cool in standard, not because I want to watch them completely take over the older formats and then Wizards has to go, oh, sorry, you know, a year later, you shouldn't be playing with that anymore because it's warped everything.
I have to say I've been kind of horrified by some of the responses that I'm seeing. So again, going back to me having grand plans and the blueprint and everything, I didn't really want Dig to be banned. Like, I didn't really feel like it needed to be. I haven't been playing Legacy that long to really have a solid opinion on it. I'm not sad that it's gone, but when I was seeing people play Graveyard Hate, and I would ask them, you know, what are you bringing in Graveyard Hate for? Are you really doing it just for me and what I'm playing? And they were like, no, we're doing it to fight the Dig Through Time decks. And my theory was that Dig Through Time would get banned, and then people would kind of phase out their Graveyard Hate. They'd be like, well, we're not really fighting Dig anymore, so we can take these things out. And I'm actually seeing the opposite happen, where I guess Rug Delver is rumored to be the next big thing now that Dig is gone. And because Rest hoses Snapcaster Mage and Nimble Mongoose, people are going, let's add more Rest in Peace. And I'm like, no, you don't need it anymore. The card
Rest in Peace is one of the best answers to Tarmogoyf for sure.
I know. And so it's kind of going horribly awry, where I thought it was going to be better for me after the banning, and it's actually seemed like it's going to be worse. I'm like, no.
Dang it.
I want to briefly argue in favor of Earthcraft. I'm only
Here we go. Go.
When I did In Contention...
First of all, tell people what Earthcraft does.
Okay, Earthcraft is a colorless and a green from Sunset enchantment. Tap an untapped creature you control. Untap target basic land.
Now, how was it broken? Tell people how it got broken.
So the reason why it was broken to begin with was there were cards like Mind Over Matter and then later Squirrel Nest, where you could like create these infinite combos with it. Basically, the Squirrel Nest combo is a colorless green, enchant a land you control. The land gains tap, put a 1/1 into play. So what you would do is you'd put Squirrel Nest on. You'd play turn 2 Earthcraft, then turn 3 you'd play Squirrel Nest on your land, and then you'd make infinite squirrels by tapping your land, making a squirrel, tapping the squirrel to untap the land, make a squirrel, make infinite squirrels.
Right.
Is that really that broken in Legacy? Like a million 1/1s on turn 3 or turn 4 that can't even attack yet? Is that really broken?
Yes.
Like, is that really what we're afraid of?
Yes.
I mean, considering that I can win the game with just 4 zombie tokens.
Yeah. Also, well, I mean, the fact that, you know, that's banned. That is banned. But making a 15/15 flying protection from colored spells on turn 2 is not banned. Is kind of absurd. I think that that Earthcraft does a couple of interesting things. It leads to interesting deck building. It means more basic lands in Legacy. It means green gets slightly better, but not just any green. Green that doesn't involve Tarmogoyf. I think that it opens up a lot of cool deck building options. Well, the thing that I'd be afraid of is like elves could probably break Earthcraft. But like, are we really that afraid of elves getting better? I mean, it's a good deck. But do we really care that it has a 2 mana enchantment that is I mean, anyway, I just think that that's a card that they could theoretically unban in the future. That was on my watch list when when land tax got unbanned.
Right.
I predicted that the week earlier on In Contention, the one of the podcasts I used to do with Matt Kranstuber and Sam Stoddard, and I think at the time it was with Joey Pasco. And we were like, yeah, but is land tax really that broken? And Black Vice is the same way. And the third one that's on my list is Earthcraft. I don't think that it would impact the format that much.
In a format with show and tell, probably it's arguable that it's at the very least something they could try. They could say, hey, we're going to unban it, and 3 months later when the next set comes out, if you've totally screwed it up and all the results from the Legacy Opens and stuff, to like say that it's busted or way too good. Like the last time there was a powerful green enchantment, it was Survival of the Fittest, and Survival of the Fittest was so stupidly overpowered.
Obviously, Survival of the Fittest was completely busted. Like the best control deck, the best mid-range deck, and the best aggro deck all had Survival of the Fittest.
Yes, it was what survival deck would you like to play in Legacy? I get it. I don't feel like you're going to get to a point where it's what's the best Earthcraft deck to play in Legacy versus, okay, they're playing the Earthcraft deck, so they're playing all these weird enchantments. They're playing a bunch like, I saw a basic land on turn 1. They're probably playing Earthcraft. I got to give it to you. That's a pretty good argument for getting rid of that thing.
Keep it in mind, Wizards. I want Earthcraft. I'm on Team Earthcraft. That's where I'm at.
Hashtag and while Team you're Earthcraft. At it, Dread Return in Modern. Thanks, bye.
No.
Yeah. See, that one is a little bit tougher of a sell. That one is completely broken.
That card is busted, and it is not good. That card is dumb. Dredge. Anyway, all right, so we are going to keep it moving, ladies and gentlemen, to gather the townsfolk as we do. And one of the ways that you can kind of gather the townsfolk, which is, kind of one of the best Reddit threads or the comments of the week or what have you, is to be able to give a voice to the voiceless. And one of the things that the Meadery, the Meadery.org, is doing is now offering the ability for you to write basically your own articles and to give you a publishing platform that isn't blogger.com, that isn't LiveJournal. It's a magic site that can post magic content, that can highlight your content alongside its, it's featured writers like, the Jeff Hooglands of the world, rather. But, I think it's one of those things where people, they come to me and they ask me and they're like, Evan, I want to make magic content. How do I make magic content? And I'm like, you just do it. And you post it somewhere and you hope it don't suck and you hope people like it and you try to point people to it. And you kind of have to be your own self-promoter while you're also creating, while you're also finding time to keep that kind of train rolling with more content, and to have something that's kind of already built for you, has the ability to embed cards and things with various, with sort of the way that you kind of have that script or whatever that can show you a card when you want to show it a card. That's a really cool thing, and that's a way that you can, really get yourself noticed and say, well, where is your author archive? And it's not like a blogger address. It's like, no, find me here on the Meadery, where you'll find a bunch of other people, and because they were highlighted enough or people read their content enough that they started getting featured regularly, and when you start getting featured regularly, all of a sudden you become a featured writer, and that, your your cred keeps building and whatnot, and people start to look more and more forward to your content. And this to me was a really cool step forward that I haven't seen from a Magic website in a pretty long time. Aaron?
Yeah, I was really excited about this. I played World of Warcraft for several years, and I was a blogger playing World of Warcraft. And back then, the majority of the bloggers were independent bloggers. It was the WordPresses and the blog spots and the things like that. And there were two main blogging hubs at the time. There was WoW Insider, rest in peace, and then there was a site called Blog Azeroth. So if you had one of these independent blogs, these sites would find you and plug you, and that's really what the issue was getting noticed. Anybody can start a WordPress or start a blogger, but it's really hard to get people to know that you're out there.
Right.
And then when I came to the Magic community, I was very surprised that the opposite was true. It was like you had these big umbrella sites, like the SCGs, the TCGs, but there really were no little guys. And that's part of the reason I got into podcasting, was because if I were to start a blog, who was going to know I existed if I wasn't on one of these sites? And so, not only does the Meadery give you a free and easy to use option, but they also promote you. They've dedicated an entire bottom bar to these community blogs, and the Meadery has a pretty healthy following. So, not only do you get to use this blog, but they will tweet you. They've been tweeting these blogs. They will put you on their front page with their articles, and you have the chance to get seen next to somebody like Jeff Hoagland or Greg Orange, and that's really what it's about, is just getting people to see you, because that's a lot of eyes that can look at your page. And there's a lot of great people out there that unfortunately won't get picked up by Channel Fireball or by TCG Player because they don't don't have those resumes. Specifically people who play weird decks or people like maybe more women blogging. And I think this is a really great opportunity to give people some voices that we otherwise wouldn't listen to.
Ruby?
Yeah, I got my start writing about Magic on a long defunct website called Londis.com, which was
Londis.
Just don't even. It's
How do you spell that?
LONDES.com. Where myself and Nick Miller both started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Bill Stark was our editor.
Was this before you did the guest show?
This was before I did the guest show.
Wow.
What does Londis even stand for?
It was a guy's last name.
Oh, okay. I thought it had some...
Mike Londis' last name.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that website sort of died and went away, and one of their big headline writer was Owen Turtenwald, who was like 15 or 16 at the time. He went on to bigger and better things, and then I moved on to the TCG Player blogs. Which used to be similar to this. I don't know what the form of their blogging network is anymore, but it certainly was super lively. I followed Bill Stark there. He became the editor. After Bill Stark left, Ricky Hayashi became the guy in charge of the blogs there. And there were some people who that might not have gotten their starts. People like Zane Begg, who I follow on Twitter and writes a lot.
Cool.
There's some folks that got their starts on those blogs as well. Just getting your name out there is huge. People like Gavin Verhey and Tom Lapilli got their starts on independent blogs and got their starts in the Magic community, got the ball rolling, they got their foot in the door, and that's the most important thing. Once you get eyeballs on you, then it's up to you. But the hardest thing is to actually get the eyeballs, is just to get the attention at first.
Right.
And so having something like this available is super important for a Magic community of writers in order to keep developing writers. They're not just going to pop up out of thin air. It's not just going to be, oh, this guy won a GP, let's see if he can write. Right? So that's not always going to be the correct crossover. You sometimes want to have people who aren't good at Magic, such as myself, who are the writers. As opposed to, it's not everybody who's good writes well, and not everybody who writes well is good. So sometimes you gotta go searching, and something like this is great.
That'd be me.
Can you say that one more time, just for the people, because that was you took me to church right there.
I mean, they can cross over. I'm not
saying they can, but not everybody who's good can write, and not everybody who can write is good. And
some people are great at both, and some people are horrible at both. But that's just a thing, So I think that having this available is a super important tool for the Magic community, and I was not aware that this was happening previous to this discussion, and I'm a huge fan of it now. So I might even just like dip my toe back into article writing.
I was thinking about it too.
Dude, that would be great. I would love to see articles by you guys, and I think that would be awesome because it's like. What I was going to say was going to be super egotistical, so never mind. I'm not going to say it.
Oh, come on.
Go on, Mr. Newsning. Let's go.
I was going to say Jordan playing minor league baseball. Like, he just shows up at the single-A ballpark, and he's like, when you've got a... But the thing is, when you have a bigger name, like myself, show up at something smaller like that, that helps the eyeballs get on the smaller folks, too.
Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things that... it just gives you an outlet that isn't just, well, I might make a WordPress. You're like, no, instead I want to join the Meadery community and kind of contribute, and I can, even network within there. A lot of people just ask me, like, how do I get noticed and what do I do for people to see me? And it's like, I get that I had the leg up because I started doing Magic video before basically almost anybody, and like, that's one of those. I had that advantage. I get that. I understand that. I appreciate that, and I love that. But like, I can't just tell people that that's what they have to do because it's too late. You know what I mean? Like now, there's a landscape out there, and there's a whole bunch of producers, and it's hard to get those eyeballs and hard to get that attention. And this is kind of a thing that you can use to springboard you to greater things. And again, you have to be able to make good content. But when you do, you have a place where it can really get noticed.
Yes. I have to say that's
if
the
you
number.
Can do it.
Sorry,
I was just going to say, if you can do it, the hardest thing is just getting those first set of eyeballs. And this just helps everyone get more readers.
Yeah, I think the number one reason that I see people stop, especially newer providers, is because they feel like nobody's listening or they feel like nobody's watching. One of the downsides of having those WordPress blogs, and I was guilty of this when I was a WoW blogger, I would make a post and I would hit refresh. and then I wouldn't get the views that I thought I wanted, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? And then I would see another blog, and they'd be getting all the views and getting really wrapped up in all of that. And when you're a new blogger, you know, and I've seen people approach me at GPs and say, hey, I'm going to start this blog, and then I'm following them, I'm like, hey, where'd you go? And they're like, well, I didn't think anybody was watching me. You know, having a big name already plug you, if it takes that out of the equation, you know, I think more people will be more inclined to keep at it and hopefully grow.
That feedback loop is incredibly important. I mean, back when I was making the Magic Show, I mean, it was very difficult, certainly at first, when I'm trying to figure out what in the world I'm even doing. And you know, I'll never forget. I think it was like episode 4 or 5 or something. And Randy Bueller went into the Star City forums and was like, "Hey, this is really cool. I'm glad you're making this, or I'm glad you made this, or I had a good time with this, or whatever." It was, you know, it was encouragement, and it was like, man, like if they're noticing what I'm doing, then maybe, you know, I should keep doing this, because, you know, like every week I would get more and more views and things like that. And it wasn't that, you know, I was making the greatest videos of all time. It was just that I was one of the only ones doing it, but I was also getting a lot of encouragement from the people who were watching it. And, you know, even today, you know, like there's that, there's certainly a, almost, I don't know about euphoria, but for me personally, when I work on a thing, like a video for a long time, and I finally release that to the world, like that wave that comes back to me that says, loved it, they liked it, they shared it on Facebook, they shared it on Twitter. I mean, I'm a YouTube comment reader, because those are the people who made me what I am today. So I want to pay attention to them. I want to tell them. And so, you know, when they find things that are flaws, like for example, we did the set review, me and Brad did, and it was an experience that was difficult. It was tough, and it made me want to... God, it was rough. It was one of the most difficult projects I've ever done in my life. But at one point in time, my phone was going off because my children were trying to reach me and stuff. But I didn't realize at the time that the mic was actually picking that up. And someone was like, that was so unprofessional. And I'm like, you know what, dude? You were totally right. And I wish I had known that. And because I was wearing these big old headphones, I couldn't hear the vibrating myself. You know, I could just feel it or whatever. And I was like, well, if I can't hear it, the microphone isn't picking it up. And that was dumb.
Check and see if my phone is off here.
Exactly right now. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the thing. But again, they were right. I appreciate that. But not only is there's that critical feedback, but there's that, like, you know, love this. Thank you guys for doing this. Loved this episode. Thought this was great. Like that type of stuff, man. If that wasn't there, I wouldn't be making as much stuff. People need that encouragement, even if it's just a little thing. Even if it was just, you know what, you did a pretty good job on that one. They're like, great, that's it.
Or more importantly, here's how you can improve.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely made it a thing to sort of pay it forward. You know, and it's funny, like, you know, when I see shows that I enjoy, I do leave a review on iTunes. You know, I do let them know I like the show, and sometimes it means the world just to have somebody say, I see you. Like, you're here. I got you.
I have noticed you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That can mean more than anything. Just to have somebody say, you know my name, like, you know, oh, okay. And I make it a habit to highlight shows that I enjoy and give them reviews, because I want that done to me. And just sort of keeping that cycle going is really important.
So if you're listening to us on iTunes, if you could go to iTunes and leave us a review, I would really appreciate that. I would love that.
That's just a flawless
so much segue. I would
also
totally enjoy that.
While you're on your iDevice, go to themeadery.org and check out their community, because this is an important tool for the continued survival of magic media.
Absolutely.
It's going to be one of those things that is, you know, when they look back in terms of like where somebody came from, like I just know that there's going to be somebody who was like, well, thanks to the Meadery giving me the outlet that I had and the attention that I got as a result, I kept working and I kept trying, and instead of making a random WordPress blog and getting completely, you know, demoralized or whatever when they don't get the feedback or the views that they want, just a little bit here and there is all it really takes for people to do great things. And
all I need to survive is just like look at my follower count on Twitter, or like see the number next to the little red dude on Twitch. Like that just gives me life.
All the life. Not too much life, but enough. So
not too much lives.
We're going to move on to splash damage. Splash damage this week. Splash damage is when something happens. It's not necessarily about magic, but it's close enough that we have to talk about it. And this week, there was a press release that we'll link to in the description, in the doobie-doo, if you will, about the settlement of the Hex versus Wizards of the Coast. And on my birthday, on September 24th, they announced that Wizards and the publisher of Magic and Cryptozoic, so this is basically between Wizards and Cryptozoic Entertainment, has resolved a litigation filed in May of last year claiming willful infringement of intellectual property rights arising from the digital trading card game Hex. The parties have entered into a settlement agreement and license with undisclosed terms. So I want you to pay very close attention to what I just said there. The parties have entered into a settlement agreement and license with undisclosed terms. The key word is license. Now, settlement agreement normally means that they cut them a check. But it's that second term, it's the license term, which means Hex is paying Wizards some amount in some fashion, whatever they do, royalties, monthly payments, quarterly payments, yearly payments, whatever, to allow them to use whatever it was that they were infringing upon, and they can come to terms on that. And instead of kind of just crushing Hex to death, they can say, well, you know what, you kind of aped a lot of this stuff, but we'll just take a piece of that pie, and that's okay. That's what that says to me. Obviously, I am just speculating. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a dude who's reading a press release on a website. But, I have seen that word before. And when they just kind of drop that in there and they immediately move on to the quotes, they immediately like, blah, blah, we recognize that Wizards owns valuable intellectual property and blah, blah, blah. That's a thing that says to me that Wizards is going to get paid from now on for Hex existing.
They are going to have bacon on all of their cheeseburgers from now until Hex goes away.
Yeah, the Hex Shards of Fate game, which I never really got into. It's done by Cryptozoic, which did the WoW TCG. They've done a lot of stuff. And a lot of their designers have come from a Magic the Gathering background.
Sure.
So it's not terribly surprising that something like this came along. I don't know that much about Hex. I do know that they have 5 colors.
Well, I saw the breakdown of Hex Magic similarities, and it was pretty bad.
They're not unsimilar. When you're the granddaddy of all card games, Magic,
Yeah,
you're gonna get a lot of stuff. But I definitely think that I don't know what the popularity of Hex is these days. I knew that it was a big deal like 2 years ago when it first came out, or when it first got real popular. And so if they're still going strong, they're gonna have to go that little bit extra stronger in order to pay the bills on their on whatever they have licensed from Wizards, which is a little awkward.
This to me is a win for Wizards.
This is not the first time that Wizards has done something like this. They are not afraid to use their legal department to protect their house,
and rightly so.
Certainly.
I certainly don't blame Wizards for doing so. Again, like when you looked at all the similarities, you were like, really, Hex? Really? Okay. You made a removal spell that was called a similar name that had the same mana cost and all this other stuff. It's like, we get it. It was Magic. You guys are in big trouble. And instead, Wizards is like, well, we won't. You can come out as the better man if you say, you'll still exist. I just get a piece of that pie.
Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that... Wizards' legal department scares me a little bit. They're very good at their jobs.
Where you start going, into the world of Hasbro corporate being the owner and of it and whatnot, like you have a lot of firepower there that the average person does not.
And Cryptozoic is not a small fish. Cryptozoic's a big company.
Yeah, they raised like $1 million or something for Hex or whatever it was. They got a serious Kickstarter that had real money behind it.
Yeah, so this is a pretty big deal. I think that there aren't many other games out there that are as similar to Magic as Hex appeared to be. So I wouldn't fear for the lives of your favorite other card games out there.
I think Hearthstone is cool. I think Hearthstone's in the clear.
Hearthstone's
just
fine.
Leave Marvel
Soulforge is good.
Alone.
Yeah, Overpower's probably on the safe side.
Overpower. I don't know. I played the new Versus system and it's very fun. So
nice.
I like it a lot.
I have to say, as captain of #Team Petty, I have to say that I love this press release because, I'm imagining just this lawyer sort of filing their nails and then Hex goes, Wizards is a groundbreaking blah, and they're like, and they're like, and we encourage you to play all of their games, and then they're like, and it's like, Wizards has been a trailblazer, and they're like, what else do you want? And they're like, just one more compliment, one more, because they're just really pouring it on thick here. Wizards of the Coast has always welcomed new games to the trading card genre, and we encourage TCG fans to not only play Magic, but to try all of their games. And it was like, they're just really just twisting the knife, and I love it. Love it.
That's technically the president of Wizards saying that, but I understand what you mean. They're also kind of just like, You know we're like the bomb diggity big daddy of all this, right?
It's like when you like beat up the neighbor kid and your mom makes you go apologize and you're like, I'm sorry, Jimmy's a nice boy, and I won't do it again. And he's a trailblazer in
Love it.
backyard stickball
with powerful branding that I could never meet or match in my lifetime.
And I wear similar T-shirts to him. And this is a fun So
that's
anyway,
a good one.
I think that it worked out okay for Hex. Obviously, this isn't like a win for them, but the fact that they didn't get shut down is a win.
That's the win.
Right?
The win is they exist, and for Wizards, they get to have another feather in their hat. So that's good for them. So as a result of us talking about our splash damage, we are going to move right along into the finisher as we do. So each week we have a finisher where we ask a question and we all answer it in our own ways. Today is International Podcasting Day. So in honor of unnecessary internet holidays, because Lord knows there are, what made-up holiday are you looking forward to celebrating? Ruben?
Well, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Jace Day. Happy Jace Day, everyone. The traditional gift for which is 2 scoops of value.
What those scoops consist of, you define yourself.
Card drawing and card selection.
There you go.
That's what I define.
Aaron?
Well, I would like to wish everybody a blessed Duke Day, which is the most holiest of days, and I request that you keep the day well by placing all of your Jun cards on the altar of Reed. Just give a little bow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man.
You know
Happy Duke Day.
Like in Hey Arnold when Helga had the altar in her closet to Arnold? That's what I picture is in your house.
No, it's more like a collage. Did you watch the first episode Did you watch the first episode of Scream Queens? No. So they made this collage, and she was like, I love a creepy collage. Like, it's just totally what it is. Yeah.
Well, and I heard Rosewater exclaim as he rode out of sight, a merry Eldrazimus to all, and to all a good blight. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
That's delightful.
Merry Eldrazimus.
I want a picture of him riding an Eldrazi with a Santa hat now. Can someone make that happen?
Please. Hashtag Eldrazimus. That'd be great. That is terrific. So before we go to our final slide, as we do, Aaron, thank you very much for joining us. Ruben, thanks for hanging out.
See you next week.
Yeah, we're going to move on to our final slide here as we do. That ends another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you guys for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, and do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.